Joke. Was it funny? Because nobody was laughing. Well, except Linda. You embarrassed me in front of our neighbors. I stared at her. Let me get this straight. You tell everyone your husband has no ambition and isn't worth keeping, but I'm the one who embarrassed you. When was the last time you said something genuinely nice about me? When was the last time you built me up instead of tearing me down? She opened her mouth and closed it. My phone buzzed. Linda's text. Hope you're okay after all that drama. If you need someone to talk to, I'm right next door. My wife noticed my expression. Who was that? Linda, deleted and blocked her number. Why would I do that? Because I'm your wife. The same wife who tried to give me away 2 hours ago. The next morning, she made my favorite breakfast, full makeup and apron. I thought we could talk about yesterday. Maybe I had too much wine. Maybe I said things I didn't mean. Actually, I think that's exactly who you are. Yesterday just happened to be the first time you said it out loud in front of witnesses. The doorbell rang. Linda stood on our porch. Sorry to bother you, but I ran out of sugar. Come on.
These Gorilla Tag cosmetics contain a dark secret. So if you go to City and check out the brand new Gorilla Tag cosmetics, you'll notice this doll. And if you equipped it and then throw it anywhere, this is what it sounds like. So don't forget to like and subscribe. These Gorilla Tag Carl's Jr.'s Buy One Western Vacancy.
My abusive father, who kicked me out at 12, wants me to be his full-time nurse now that he's sick. Dad threw me out at 12 because I reminded him too much of Mom, who died. He didn't care that it was the middle of January. He wanted me out of the house more than he cared about my safety. Dad smashed my phone against the wall before throwing me out so I couldn't call anyone for help. But my sister Alyssa had been checking on me every day since she'd escaped Dad's house at 18, 3 years earlier. When I didn't answer her daily text that night, she knew something was wrong. She drove around for hours checking every place a scared kid might hide. Found me at a bus stop at 2 a.m., hypothermic and barely conscious. Alyssa was only 21, but she took me in without hesitation. She worked 3 jobs just to keep us afloat. quote, I studied harder than anyone because education was my only way out. Alyssa helped me with homework between her shifts. Never complained once. Dad never called to see if I was alive. My 13th birthday passed. Alyssa bought me a cupcake with her tip money. Dad probably forgot I existed. High school graduation came. Alyssa sat front row crying proud tears. Dad didn't show even though I'd sent an invitation. When I got into nursing school, Alyssa drove me to my first day. I graduated at 22. Alyssa screamed so loud when they called my name. I'd stopped sending invitations by then. By 25, I was working pediatric ICU, helping kids who'd been hurt like us. At this point, I heard through the grapevine that Dad had been married and divorced twice. He was living alone in some apartment, drinking himself stupid every night. 3 weeks ago, Dad shows up at my hospital, just appears at the nurse's station asking for me. He looks terrible. Yellowed skin, swollen belly, shaking hands, classic liver failure from decades of drinking. He doesn't apologize, doesn't ask how I am. He just stares at me and says, you'll move in with me starting Monday. I thought I misheard him. What? He rolls his eyes like I'm stupid. I'm sick, you're a nurse. I'm your father and you're my kid. Like he didn't throw his 12-year-old daughter into the freezing cold. I told security to escort him out. That should have been the end of it. But no, he starts calling the hospital daily, demands to speak to me. He gets my personal number somehow and sends text after text, lists of his medications, his dialysis schedule, which foods I need to prepare, how I need to quit my job to care for him properly. He even sends floor plans of his apartment showing where I could set up a bed to monitor him at night. Each message gets worse. You owe me for giving you life. I'm dying and you're being selfish. What kind of daughter abandons her father? He calls my supervisor, claiming I was neglecting a family member in medical need. He tries to file complaints with the nursing board saying I'm violating my oath by not helping him. He even shows up at my house banging on the door until neighbors call the police. After 3 weeks of this nightmare, I'm breaking down. I can't sleep. Every notification makes me panic. I'm having flashbacks to being 12, standing in the cold, wondering if I'd die that night. Alyssa finds me crying in my car after a shift. I can't breathe. This man who destroyed my childhood is trying to destroy my adult life too. She grabs my shoulders. We're ending this today, at the old house. My hands are shaking, but she's right. Alyssa and I drive 2 hours to our childhood home. My heart pounds harder with every mile. She keeps squeezing my hand. At least we have each other, she says. The house appears around the corner. Same cracked driveway where he beat us. Same peeling paint we hid behind. Now I'm back to push him out of my life forever. Dad answers the door holding a beer. His face goes from annoyed to shocked when he sees both of us. Then he smiles. My precious daughters, he says, stepping aside. Finally come to your senses. Come in. I'll show you where everything is. Alyssa and I take a step back. He keeps talking like we've already agreed. Your old room is storage now, but you can clear it out. One of you can sleep there while taking night shifts. He's already planning our lives again. Alyssa speaks first. We're not here to help you. Dad's face turns red. Starts yelling about ungrateful children. About everything he's done for us. You broke my bones. You threw me out in winter. I was 12. He tries to interrupt, but I keep going. I will never be your nurse. I save children from people like you. That's when I pull out the restraining order. Contact me again and you'll be arrested. Abusive father who kicked me out at 12.